Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the monthly Arizona Water for All webinar series. My name is Nieves Vasquez. I am an Arizona WASH program specialist with Water for People, and I work very closely with the Arizona Water for All Network on ensuring that we have avenues for collective action in addressing water insecurity and water access gaps in Arizona. Part of that collective action piece is coalition strengthening. And so allowing us to see where we can partner, where we can rely on each other for a resource and opportunities to learn from each other. So with that, a bit of background for the Arizona Water for All Network, for those who might be unfamiliar, is that it's a growing community connecting researchers from Arizona's 3 state universities, practitioners from various sectors, and community partners to address water insecurity holistically. And so the goal is to advance the knowledge of regional water challenges by fostering collaborations and connecting with people and resources so we can have stronger and lasting water solutions for all communities in Arizona. So this is how the monthly webinar series came to be, as an inclusive space to gather online, which now happens every second Wednesday of every month. And so this is a very casual virtual lunch chat, so feel free to eat your lunch as we listen to our speakers. When we have a space to eat together, I really do think that's when we learn best from each other and we can form strong partnerships. So we appreciate you showing up. Throughout our session, you will see links and resources in the chat to stay involved and connected beyond this webinar. We have such like a LinkedIn group where you could do online discussion. We have our website where we post blogs and a few publications and resources. Of course, our newsletter with a variety of info, highlighting some of the various awesome work that you all do, and so much more. So we'll be posting those links in the chat throughout so you can stay connected. So today we will be hearing from researchers that are looking at water quality across Arizona households from different methods and perspectives. And so we have with us Daniel Salcedo Serrano and Lee Voth-Gaeddert from Arizona State University. And we also have Diana Calvo Martinez from Northern Arizona University. So I will let them briefly introduce themselves. Whoever's brave to go first.
If I'm unmuted, I can hop in.
Okay, thanks, Lee.
Yeah, so I'm Lee. I'm an assistant research professor in the Biodesign Center for Health through Microbiomes, which is kind of odd. Part of my work is around trying to understand what happens when you get bad water into your system and what it does to your body / your microbiomes. But then the other half of my work obviously is around how do we prevent that from actually getting into your body through water treatment or other things that we can do. So that's a lot of the work that we do. And Danielle and I work pretty closely together on a number of different issues around Arizona and beyond. So.
Lee is my supervisor, so the same. It's a great way of framing why am I at the Health through Microbiomes department rather than other place else. I'm a assistant research scientist, and yes, I'm in charge of all the water quality testing, analyzing, and doing something practical with that information with our participants in order to try to help to improve their life some way.
I'm Diana Calvo, and I'm assistant professor at Northern Arizona University, and I am an environmental engineer. I have worked in water security since I was in Colombia, where I'm originally from, like 20 years ago. And I specialize a lot in microbial ecology as well, so trying to see like which microbes are in water, but also how can we use microbes for something useful. And yeah, part also as well of Arizona Water for All, of course. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for introducing yourself briefly. I will go ahead and hand it off to Lee to kick us off.
What I'll briefly kind of set the table with is thinking about a framework or even a roadmap to kind of, I'll put heavy quotes around formalizing what we might call the decentralized water system sector. So it sounds very technical, but it's kind of meant to be to some degree if we're thinking about kind of professionalization or formalization of these sectors. So I'll just kind of present you a couple of things that we've been writing about. And it's really been formed by the work we were doing, whether it's kind of in the AWI, AW4A network, or through collaborators working at other locations, whether it's kind of in other tribal areas kind of around Arizona or in Alaska or in the Virgin Islands or other places like that. A recent publication we had was kind of around the idea of thinking about the household and being essentially them acting as a utility. When you are a single household that is managing your water source to the tap, you are essentially kind of acting as your own water utility. So how do we support you in doing that if you were kind of on your own in that? And so what we tried to do in this initial paper was do some kind of comparisons between what we think about centralized systems, because we want to get all our nerdy experts that are like really good at understanding and supporting research in the centralized systems to come over to maybe a more exciting and less well-defined area in the decentralized systems. So in centralized systems, we think about larger drinking water treatment plants, different processes that deal with contaminants based on the source water for the systems. Typically, that's groundwater. Sometimes it's surface water. And then the piping network that distributes that. But if we then compare that to what we typically see in decentralized systems, we see a very large cadre of different things, whether that's thinking about the actual source of the water. So that might be private wells. That might be things like rain harvesting. So a lot of the initial work I'd done was in the Virgin Islands, which about 70% of households use rain harvesting there. A lot of folks kind of around here and other places use hauled water delivery systems, whether that's like a professional or an actual company, or kind of a self-haul where they have filling stations located in different places. Or I would even argue if you go buy water at the store, you were doing some form of like water hauling. And so there's a lot of different ways that we think about getting water from the source to the tap, and the different people that are involved in that. And what we see oftentimes when we kind of trying to evaluate these things systematically is the big kind of takeaway is there's a lot more people potentially involved between kind of the source of the water and you consuming that water in decentralized systems. So you think about, a plumber would be involved in some level of household kind of operations, installing pumps or helping you with your well, or in-house. If you're doing hauled water, that's going to be someone driving the truck, the source water, the filling stations that you have, to anything kind of in between that in terms of how to kind of maintain and facilitate those types of things. And so the people that are involved in that are a lot more diverse, and they're a lot more they have their own kind of like licenses and accountability mechanisms that are in place there. And so when we think about what do we need to actually kind of continue to improve upon and continue to formalize and professionalize this sector, we have to kind of think about the knowledge and information we need and what that should lead to. So obviously that's things like trying to develop best practices that can potentially lead to standards, which can potentially lead to some sort of kind of alignment with regulation, classification criteria. We have that for like all these things exist for centralized systems. And so if there's ways that we can think about trying to get at those problems for decentralized systems, that can be a big win for us in terms of trying to find different ways of providing solutions, whether that's through state programs, links to actual kind of like centralized utilities that cover decentralized systems, to just supporting households that are on their own, that want to be on their own but want support in being on their own. So a wide range of benefits, but kind of having the state of knowledge be updated as frequently as possible, so we kind of know where we need as researchers to support in working towards kind of these outcomes of professionalization. As we think about that, and I think, at least for me, the natural kind of next question is like, what types of models do we have in terms of services people acquire? So we think of a service like, water hauling service might be a service, or a plumber coming out to evaluate your pump that's on your well. So those are like services, but the nice thing about a centralized water system is you have a single service that covers everything. And that's really nice because that makes it a lot more streamlined and easier to engage with. But when you're in a decentralized kind of system, you might have a range of options for services you can engage in. So we kind of thought about mapping what we have seen and seen people propose or talk about in the literature for options along kind of the spectrum. So clearly kind of on the far left side of the spectrum, you might think more kind of about like if you're on your own, if you're more of kind of a like tech savvy person or want to be kind of independent, it's going to be more self-service. So you're going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. You might want to Google some stuff every once in a while. What those kind of look like, in terms of that, but it could also eventually be low cost because you're not having to pay for a lot of issues unless you don't know what you're doing and you completely screw it up, and then you have to pay for an actual professional to come in and help you, like a plumber. You might have kind of this middle tier, which might be kind of an assisted service, that maybe once or twice a year someone actually comes out and helps with you, more than just providing water. Maybe they provide an evaluation of your well and your treatment system, and give you recommendations or help you change filters or something like that. Or maybe you are allowed to like call all the way to like a contracted service where like it's pretty high frequency, high touch from a company. We've seen some of these examples might be from like an example I have here is an Alaskan utility had part of their network be kind of non-piped networks, but they provided the kind of the whole cadre of services in terms of water hauling, and recommendations for household treatment and things like that. And so it was kind of this service that was all kind of bundled together underneath the utility, but it wasn't a decentralized system. So kind of some range of examples that we typically see in terms of how do we support these households in a scalable manner. And then we can kind of go through like, if we're thinking about our individual interactions we've had with households, of like what are the typical, for our own household for that matter, what are the typical failures that we typically see that these services would be trying to help mitigate or get ahead of? Things like how do you just like find and source the right types of treatment technologies, so filters or water filters or UV bulbs. How do you kind of actually do the physical replacement, the actual maintenance, and kind of handle any kind of emergency repairs, routine system checks to kind of get ahead of any kind of failures or issues, and access to information to making decisions in that space. And we kind of map again, like, from that self-service all the way to contracted service, what kind of support would these potential groups or types of service contracts actually provide. So I know it's a little boring in terms of the actual like terminology, but again, that's kind of semi-intentional because we want it to sound professional, because it is professional. We want to provide professional services for these households that we're serving and do the best we can for that. AI is. But the message of the idea that I want you to kind of like appreciate as we kind of look at this together is, if the household is on their own or even in some type of service contract, being able to monitor that system is very important for kind of conducting maintenance and services in this space. And so we have this in centralized systems. We have sensors all around the network to make sure that we understand flow and pressure in the pipes that distribute the water. There's a lot of sensors throughout the water treatment plants that are there in terms of making sure the treatment's effective, to making sure that the parameters that ensure that treatment is effective are optimal. So there's a lot of data that we have and models that we use to kind of streamline this that really doesn't exist at a household level. So thinking about not just like one-off sensors, and so we've kind of essentially reviewed sensors that are on the market that are low cost, and trying to kind of think about what are the different points of monitoring that you might want. So as an example, this is why I don't ask AI to generate images you put in the presentation. But you might have households that are kind of doing water storage either below ground or above ground. Either of those, you're going to have some type of pump that will pump the water into the household. You don't want to like run out of water, because that'll just like run your pump, burn out your pump, and that's like a couple $1,000s to replace a pump. And kind of water level sensors are really helpful. If you have pressure kind of sensors on both sides of treatment of a treatment option, like a filter, you can kind of evaluate pressure drops across that. And so that's can be helpful if you see a large pressure drop. That might have some clogging, and you might need to change out your filter. But if you see a sudden kind of shift to no pressure drop at all, that means you have a rupture in your filter. So there's like these minor things that we can kind of like monitor and evaluate and integrate data together to make it very simple for a household to kind of ensure maintenance and mitigate kind of catastrophic or emergency failures that'll cost a lot of money. But what's on the market that's like below $100 is not great. We've kind of tested a number of different products that aren't really great. If you get up to like $300, $400 range, they're not bad, but they're kind of individual capabilities like water levels and tanks. But you can't integrate even if you bought like the 3 most expensive sensors that do pressure drops, water levels, and flow rate, that's like $1,000, and you can't integrate the data together to make these types of decisions. And so the goal here and the takeaway here for us is thinking about how do we demonstrate to areas, to commercial markets that are tangential to this, like the RV markets, other things like that, that there's demand for these types of technologies, and that if you would build a sensor array that would be useful for households, you would have a market to sell it in. So that's kind of like what we're thinking about in that space. So anyways, that's kind of like the high level of what we've been thinking about. Obviously, we're filling in a lot of these kind of data points, and Daniel kind of go over some of that, and Diana as well, I think, in terms of how we engage households and realizing kind of how do we support them with the challenges that they are consistently facing, and how do we do that in an effective and scalable way. So
Thank you, Lee. I'll hand it over to Daniel.
All right, so my focus will be more towards lessons learned on the things that we've done with all this background information that we've gathered as academia. So I've had the greatest opportunity to just go there and live the not live, but see in person the reality of all these different folks that live out there in the middle of the desert, and see how are they handling their situation, and what they think, and what they do with it. So I will start with a big overview. I've worked with the group conducted mainly by Carolina, but we have also done stuff here at ASU, and we have partnered with people that have worked at Nogales. So, and all that information has funneled into my computer. Like I have all the data, and I've analyzed that. So thanks to that, we have the equivalent of 249 household water analysis and a total of 370 samples. And all of this scattered throughout 7 counties. Yes, 7 counties all around Arizona. 154 of those water samples are from a private water system, public water system. So just your municipal mainline, and 95 of those are from private wells. And the sample points are, I mean, they're different, but we can kind of cluster them into straight from the faucet, point of entry. Those two are mainly on public water systems. Your water after filtration, well water, water from storage tanks, water after being softened, water after being treated with RO systems, surface waters. We have tested some surface waters, and water from heaters. So we have thanks to that, we now have like a footprint of each, like it's recognizable, and one of our eventually we will start working on a paper where we can actually highlight these footprints, maybe with a principal component analysis or something like that. In any case, it might be of interest to you. Oh, let me set my timer though. It might be of interest to you that as it is no surprise, more than 50% of the water was hard water, and hard water, you might remember it or not, but I'll let you know, is water basically that contains high levels of calcium and magnesium, and together they create this scaling around pipes. And if it's very big, it can cause damages to the overall water system. So hardness is it's an operational parameter that is of interest of people, but it does not say anything about other minerals or even the taste, um, or even how it's going to behave in your skin or whatever. And I mentioned this because we're going to address the ideas behind several things on water and how people interpret it. All right, so most common salts found in the water in Arizona, according to according to our sample, high sulfates, like from higher to less, sulfates, chlorides, calcium, sodium, and potassium. So it's like by far sulfates is like what is more common here in Arizona. And the big high five, unfortunately, is arsenic, fluoride, manganese, which is a very common, very particular thing from here, the area, uranium also, and nitrates. So yes, there is arsenic, and there is arsenic in 43% of this of the samples, but this is only for the well water samples, and I will talk more about it on the next slide. All right. So let me move this. We have found throughout all of these visits that we've done and people that we talked to that we have pretty much found every scenario that you can think of regarding water relation with people. We have found people that saying that it's disgusting. People that are appalled when they see me trying their water. They look, how can you dare to try that poison? It's like, okay. And by the way, well, okay, I'll say it later. And there's people like I don't care. It is what it is. That's water. I'm alive, so it should be good. And there's like in between those extremes, there's a middle where I know there's issues in my water, but I'm doing something about it, or our whole community is doing something about it. So for starters, like one of the most important things that we found, and I think interesting rather than important, is that the public water systems had the highest level of people being afraid of that water, say people from here, from Phoenix area, or people from Nogales. They just don't drink that water, but the water from the public water systems, as far as we tested, is fine. There was no arsenic, there was no lead, there was no uranium. So I think it's a curious discrepancy that the public water systems they're doing all they can to treat the water have the highest distrust of the public, and they are the ones, most of them. This is just a general scenario. Remember, there's always like outcasts everywhere, but most of them on the public water systems claim that they don't drink it because, for starters, you're not supposed to. Why? Because you're not supposed to. That's it. No more analysis than that. Because there's PFAS, because there's microbes, because the chemical taste. And we test the water is just fine. And then we go on the private, on the most rural areas, and those guys are the ones that, well, it is what it is. We drink it, we're fine. Or we are aware of the water situation in the community. As a community, we help each other. We tell what we have to do. Yeah, so there's more knowledge in that, and more trust in the rural areas, which is a funny thing, I would say. And I can talk about the specifics, but I would take a lot of time but just let's stay with this scenario. And then, okay. So the next couple of ideas that I wanted to address in this short participation of mine is which treatment technologies are, like, after all of this, which treatment technologies are best suited for different regions, or what a decentralized water treatment approach adapted to Arizona might look like. But in reality, a might look like is something that is already happening. We already found in the field people doing their own They're on decentralized water treatments, some sort. But I would say that I cannot pinpoint by region how your water is going to be, because there's a lot of variables. In the same site, there could be people with very high arsenic problems, but 1 mile away, they don't have arsenic problems. So it's very dynamic. There's no way of saying, oh, this whole region needs, for sure, all of y'all need to expend some money in this or that, because we have found that it's not the case. So to that question, I would answer, you first need to test regardless of the place. You need to test your water, especially if you're in a rural, separate area. And testing will bring several things to you. It will bring money savings, it will bring trust, and it will bring certainty on what to do. Because a lot of them, most of them, uh, well, people that live like in uncertainty, and they are concerned underwater, they overkill their water treatments. They put as much filters as they can. They use 3 lines of sediment filters without even knowing what the sediment filter is doing, and then the softener, and after the softener, they do all this like an arrow system here, and at the end, we have encountered cases where after all of those treatments, they're not even tackling their main issue. A couple of them even had no issue at all. So I would say that if I were to do like a real intervention for the community, it would be what we're doing: water testing, accessible water testing for people. Bring your water and we'll test it for you, rather than providing any treatment, rather than providing other things. First, I would like, the best thing that I can come up with in my mind is to have a reliable place, free or very cheap, or streamline water sampling, massive water sampling thing to help people. I think that would be of most use for them. And something else that we didn't consider is that the community helps each other. So there's a very, like in these remote places, even if your neighbor is 2 miles away from you, your closest neighbor, there's a very big community sense. They help each other. In most of those places where we were at, why do you have this filter? Oh, because Jerry told me to. Who's Jerry? Oh, he's the water guy. Everyone knew Jerry. It's like, Jerry, whatever Jerry says, we'll do it, because there was one guy that knew about water treatments. No questions asked, just trust, because it's a community that trusts each other. There, that there were a couple of cases that people said, we are here in this remote place by design. Actually, most of them. We want to be left alone. We want to be away from the government. We want to be away from these crowded places. And oddly enough, they end up doing a very tight community with those that live like them. So it's a very curious thing. I really liked it. In any case. So there's already some action in most of these places. There's, again, there's a couple that don't. There's a couple that just don't talk to anyone, that don't want to be bothered by anyone, and they're trying to do their best by themselves. But the most common case was, and I think that we didn't give as much importance as we should have, was the community sense, how people help each other. Because when we arrived, they have already been doing something, someone helped them, someone did that work for them, someone talked to them. In any case, I would say that that's my conclusion at this point, after seeing all of this and kind of breaking our minds, trying to come with like, what's a good treatment for everyone? No, I wouldn't dare to say. I would say the best way of helping people in Arizona, and honestly the rest of the world, to be more to have a better sense of security of the water is step number one. Let's go test it. That being said, we did not test for a couple of things. I wish we would have been able to test like for an even bigger scope of things, like volatile organic compounds or disinfection byproducts, which are also toxic, and they can also have harm people even if you're showering with it, because they can be absorbed by in in oh man, inhalar. Diana, how do you say inhalar? Inhaling it. Thank you. You sent me the sign. I got it here. Thank you. By inhaling or just by thermal absorption. But those are usually more common towards the public water systems, because they do chlorination, and at the rural areas we found only one case of people actively chlorinating their water. So anyway, that's my takeaway. I hope that's enough. Diana, you're off.
What Lee and Daniel have talked about so far, it's extremely aligned with what we are doing in NAU. Our focus in my group is indigenous communities, so we do a lot of water quality research and testing. I cannot agree more in we need the data, and that's one of the biggest things that we can do for our communities here and beyond. It's getting that data, like getting tested, so we can know further away what we can do about it. So in indigenous communities is not very different from rural communities, since we have a lot of indigenous communities in rural areas. So around 30% of Native American households lack access to pipe water because of that nature of rural areas as well. We have 41% of indigenous Colombians that have access to water. And here I make a point that we do a lot of work in Arizona, but we're also doing work in Colombia. And the similarities that we see are really, really big. Then we also have higher odds of contamination in stored and sourced water. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that and why we see that and why it's so important. What Lee was mentioning and what Daniel was mentioning about, okay, what happens after I have my water out of the source or out of the treatment? Now it's in the household, now it's stored. What is happening with the quality of that water? Okay, so I'm just going to jump over. So what we are doing is always engaged with the community first. That's a very important step, very meaningful, and not only important, but it's crucial that we connect with the community first. So our approach with the communities in Arizona, as well as with the communities in Colombia, is to come and say, look, we can test water, we can maybe collaborate. We frame it in a way that it's not like we're helping the communities, we are collaborating to get better water quality and to have higher water security. So we always engaged with the community first and like see what are their interests. For example, in Arizona, as Daniel was showing, arsenic, uranium are very important. In Colombia, is more related to microbes and other contaminants. And sometimes, well, they just don't know what they are looking for in water. They just want safe water, right? So it's very important to do that community engaged portion of your research. And I'm going to show you here 4 different communities. I'm going to keep the names of the slides for their privacy. The only one is in rural Colombia. There is the Guayú community in northern Colombia. We have 2 communities in northern Arizona, 1 community in southwest Arizona. They're a little bit different between them. The first one is with treated water. The second one is hauling untreated. And then we have some livestock communities there as well. So physical-chemical parameters, very important. They might seem basic sometimes, but they can tell us so much about that quality of the water and what we can do about it. We do very basic microbiological indicators. As E. coli, total coliforms, to know if we have some fecal matter associated to the water. But we are also doing some extended microbial ecology, looking more at which microbes I have there, which pathogens I have. Do I have viruses? Do I have Giardia, crypto? Do I have other types that might be present in water? And we're doing that in just one of the communities, and hopefully we can extend that in the future. But again, as Daniel was saying, just having that basic, which is not basic, big package of physical-chemical parameters is key here. So kind of replicating what Lee was saying, well, we have source, we have treatment, but after treatment and after we don't have regulations or after we don't have more infrastructure, then the contamination risk rises. So in storage, it rises. If we have household tap, it might rise as well. It depends of how water is managed, okay? So if we look at one of these communities, let me jump here for the sake of time. We have this community in northern Arizona. This is just one example of total dissolved solids. We see that total dissolved solids are 13, 22, 31 milligrams per liter. That is way below the 500 milligrams per liter of the EPA secondary guidelines. So all the parameters that we measure as physical-chemical were below the maximum contaminant levels, were under guidelines. So it looks well, but this is the water that is coming from the source or from treated water. So we measure in the well, we measure in the treated tap water. We didn't see any concerns, but then we measure household storage and we detected E. coli. So that is telling us that water is being the water quality is being detrimented in that storage point. Maybe it's not happening right there in the storage, but we do know that in the storage there is presence of these E. coli, which is again a fecal contaminant. So treatment here can be effective, but if we don't go towards what's happening afterwards, we might be losing this data, and it might have a risk for the community. We also have another community here. This is untreated well and whole water. This is in Colombia, kind of similar, right? This is untreated, so we measured the source, was not detected. The community had a community tank, and we didn't had any E. coli or any total coliforms, but then it goes to household storage, and we have more than 15,000 CFUs per 100 milliliters of total coliforms. We had three out of the three houses that we measured, we detected E. coli. So there is that, again, that risk of that household storage, what's happening in household, and how can we address this. So my message here is, if holding water or if you're storing water, somehow that might have a very important effect in the water quality in your systems. Here we have the 4 different communities that we measured. We had no storage here in well treatment. We have some storage in untreated feedstock in another community in Arizona. Interestingly enough, when we went and measured feedstock like this, kind of half tanks that we have in rural Arizona, we didn't find any E. coli. We found some coliforms that might be actually even from the soil. So that's interesting to see. For drinking water, for people, we saw that when it was stored, we did see E. coli. So very important to go back to what Lee was saying of how can we kind of put together something in household level. Very, very important point. Okay, so that's it for those communities. This is telling us that storage safety is as critical as the source treatment. So we cannot forget about that storage. Basic data, as Danielle was saying, is not really basic. That's why I put it on quotes. It's very powerful, and we should try to cover as much as we can so we can improve water security in our regions. Community engagement is not optional. We have to engage the community from zero. Even when you design your research project, I think that they should be included. And this is not unique to Arizona. As I show you, we are like Arizona, Colombia, very far away in South America. We're seeing very similar patterns. Okay, I think I will close with that so we have some time for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you to our presenters. And we will transition to Q&A with that. So feel free to unmute yourself or put in the chat if you have any questions for our presenters, comments, points of collaboration you've noticed. And if folks prefer, we can stop recording, but I'm open to whatever people prefer.
Nieves, you're talking about collaboration. I was already texting Lee, oh my God, like we have to do like this. We have so much in common, and like the data that we are collecting, it complements quite well.
Already a success story.
I agree. There's also a little bug flying around me and stuff. You see me flying. I'm excited, but also I'm trying to get rid of a bug at the same time. I have a nerdy question for Daniel. I was curious if you think, because I know this came up early in our work, about people trying to use treatment to improve their water, but actually making it worse. And I'm curious, based on what you've seen data-wise, if you have a guess on like the people that use treatment, what % of those people actually made their water worse versus made it better versus didn't really do, or was it kind of either or, like both?
Oh, wow.
Like it's like 50-50. Did most people actually make it better? But obviously there's like clearly some people that made it worse, or is it balanced? Or I'm just curious if you have any sense. Well, obviously we'll get more into it when we do the data analysis, but I don't know.
Well, I'm really fond of percentages and numbers. I don't have the exact number, but I can tell that we have found enough cases to say that a bunch of people have worsened their situation. A bunch of people are doing a great job, and another bunch of people are applying treatments without knowing what it's doing. It's just wasting money. Yeah, yeah. And that brings me to the point that we had the opportunity to test for all of those things even things that are not even regulated by EPA, just to focus, just to see what comes out, and to have at the end of the day one table to see we should focus only on these 5 guys, and you'll be fine, or most Arizona. So I would be inclined to, for those folks that already are treating, I will be inclined to provide information for not information, but testing capacity for those big five, you know. I think it would cover most of their issues, for sure. But yeah, I would say 30-30-30. Do you want draw between the three?
You're being recorded, so whatever you say is obviously.
I'll be in Mexico by the time this goes. All right, who's next? Jeremiah, I think, raised their hand first.
All right, a question. Thank you, panelists. A question for all three of you, and it has to do with trust. Something that you mentioned, Danielle, in community members. There was, who's Jerry? Jerry's the guy that everybody trusts. But thinking about Diana, where you work with indigenous communities, there's a lot of understandable, justifiable, well-founded mistrust in researchers, in people coming from the outside and saying, "Here's the best thing for you," kind of a thing. And yet we're saying some of the best things we need are some data points here. So that would be like an insertion of our knowledge at a later point, that the systems are already in place and we're giving them information about how to make their system better. We also probably want to engage with them as they're putting in brand new systems from the engineering standpoint, Lee, thinking about getting ready to install systems. So my question is, this is all sort of around trust. What do you all see as the key factors in what's necessary for outsiders, for researchers, for engineers to be able to come into these communities to build trust, to be able to do any of these kind of things that we're talking about here? So what are those key factors in building trust in these communities?
I can start if you want. I think like our strategy, and we have learned a lot of things when working with communities and have tried to improve our approach in the run. If you can connect with a member directly of the community, and that the member of the tribe or any communities it's interested and want to do something about water security, I think that gives you a bridge, and you really have to be very engaged and building that trust, as you just said, with the whole community. So at the beginning, we kind of jump in one of the communities because of a connection, and it has worked really well. We are very, very thankful for that connection. But now our approach is we go with a member of the community that we connected directly, and then present as not as this is my project, do you like it or not? It's like these are our capabilities. Can we do something in collaboration to improve water security in this community? So I think that it's really key to have that direct connection and that bridge and build that connection and engage with the community. And that can be, like sometimes for us, like our specific case, sometimes it has been like this, like a month, and we already have a resolution. We already have like things happening. Other times it can be a year. Well, you just like hang out with them, like they know you, and like that's part of the process. I know in terms of research, it's a little hard because it's like, oh, I need funding, so I need the collaborator to go and get money, but just have even like that sounds funny, but even paying yourself, like just go and like connect. It's extremely important.
Yeah, I generally agree. As a white male, I have a lot of opinions. But no, we have to, especially in these situations, I do not like going into any community I don't already have a connection with. Whether it's with, the water work we're doing or, the stuff we're doing around kind of malnutrition in kids. We always work with embedded local institutions that already have like intense networks. I think that's absolutely critical for any type of issue. And to put it, maybe to kind of the other term I'll use from a different field to kind of describe what I'm hearing from Diana is framing the value proposition for the end user. So again, that feels kind of crass, but like just as in terms of different terminologies we use in different fields, there's methods out there that I think are valuable to kind of look at to help ensure that we're aligned and wholly focused on benefiting the people that we're engaging, as opposed to bringing our own, agenda along with us. But Carol.
Yeah, that's perfect. Totally agree. I just wanted also to add that it's always good to start finding like your local champion. They're gonna help open the doors and is interested, and that can be like even a co-researcher and get involved more deep in the research, not just doing the opening the door. But as well, what we've done, and I think most people here know, but just I think just to say out loud as so that this can go to the YouTube. We partnered with our CNC and our CAP, so local nonprofits that have like a long experience in Arizona working in communities with rural systems related to water. And we would never be able to do what we do without that partnership, because we, unfortunately, in this project did not have the time to do the necessary trust building and connection with communities that we know it's needed. So, and because of a lot of also bureaucracy, it took us a long time before we kickstart things, and that partnership had been instrumental. So, and we've been working very close. We became kind of like a whole team between the two institutions, and we work very closely in complementing with our different expertise. We make sure we're collecting the data for the research, but we're also doing the outreach and the workshops to provide resources and useful information. So it's been really great, and we learn a lot, and hopefully we're giving something back to the households that we're working and improving. Even if some people told us just like, I feel better about my water just having that information. Sometimes even just their peace of mind, I find, is like, it inspires me and feels like really good to know that we're helping people just at least feel a little better.
Yeah, and if you come visit to any of our workshops, you will hear why. Yeah, I would like to add also, like, if I had to, you got me thinking, Jeremiah, if I had to do it all over again, if we had to do it all over again, how would you, like with this lessons learned, how would you engage? How would you go to a community? Um, I think at the end of the day, it was, of course, as Caro said, it was time, because RCAP guys at some point they were knocking on doors. They were actually knocking on doors, like just asking people, "Do you wanna?" We're offering free. They were like throwing this reward. It was like, we're trying to do a free water sample for you. We're trying to do that for you. It was like trying to hook them in with that, but also it was a mixture, because Caro and I would also go firsthand, and we will try to go to public places like libraries, places where people are accustomed to engage with other humans, and just be friendly enough to just talk to us. Sometimes we were at restaurants talking to people, like engaging with. So it's just, I would say it's a soup of everything. Definitely, I would try to stay away of knocking people's doors. I don't think that's a pretty nice idea. But the RCAP guys, they do have the experience to do that. They did it, and it worked. But it worked in a team effort. It was not just one thing. It was just try to everything. And sometimes one thing helped more than the other. And I would say, for example, Juma, the door-to-door knocking, just that's what got us the samples. But places like La Paz, it was us going to a restaurant where the manager of the restaurant was a very active community member, and she connected us immediately with a bunch of other people. So but basically it's just go out there. No remote thing. You have to go there. You have to be walking there. And I would say that it comes to that. You gotta go there yourself.
Thank you. I don't want to take the time if somebody else has a question, but I do have a question for both of you, and is, Lee, you were mentioning decentralized systems and maybe putting those sensors and like trying to make kind of like that treatment on a household. I was wondering if there is kind of like a tier level like option, meaning like, okay, we have the data, put chlorine on your tank, or better practices, and then maybe a little bit more, and maybe, okay, now we can put the sensor. So have you like considered that, and both of you consider that on that on that vision that you have, or how can we maybe kind of jump faster in like maybe some practices that might improve water quality?
Yeah. Yes, is my answer.
Okay. Excellent.
No, I think it's an important question, and the strategy for how to map the solution space to the problem space, I think, is, to sound super nerdy, is kind of maybe the question of like, and then like the barrier to action is kind of the other thing we think about, of like, all right, if it's low-hanging fruit, they're more likely to do it, or you're more likely to get sustainability out of this, or you're more likely to get action immediately but failure over the next 6 months. So there's all these questions that circulate in that space. And so I do think having some sort of like tiered system, whether that's tiered through like a formal kind of service, or through just kind of more of a research engagement, is an interesting question, and I think worth like fleshing out the thought. So,
Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone for coming to our webinar. And thank you so much, our presenters and all the questions. I can't wait to see how the collaboration and partnerships grow. Like, I'm already excited. We will have another webinar next month as well, so keep an eye out for that.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks for the
everyone. I
opportunity.
appreciate you all. Thank you.